Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's me again, Professor Plunkett, here at Pierce College. We just finished up our Week 5 on-campus version of the class, and I wanted to touch base with you as to what we did this evening. We did several things, as a matter of fact. And our handout, my weekly handout, is on the website, so if you wanted to pull that down and you can see what it was. But we discussed some current events, what's going on out in the world of criminal justice this week. One of those was the trial of Eric Freen. Eric Freen was the guy who ambushed two state troopers outside of the Bloomsburg barracks up in northeastern Pennsylvania. One of those troopers was killed, and one of them severely injured to this day, was hit in both of his hips. So we talked about that. He was found guilty today, and now they're going into the penalty phase of the trial. So we talked a little bit about how that might relate to our course material tonight. One of the things we're talking about is a pre-sentence investigation and pre-sentence report. And now his is a death penalty case, so he's actually going to have another trial to determine whether or not he should get the death penalty or not. So that's going on. We also talked about some other issues going on this week in the news. And like I said, you should really be checking out the news periodically, stay in tune with what's going on, because if you really have an interest in the field of criminal justice, there's pretty much something going on every day of the week in the world of criminal justice that is related to what you want to do. We actually had a little review of last week's material, which was the history of probation and certainly the administration, how somebody becomes on probation, what's the decisions that are made, and that tied in nicely with what we are supposed to discuss this evening, which is pretrial services. What might happen pretrial? Are there people assigned to observe or to investigate people before they go to trial? We also talked about sentencing and the pre-sentence report. Now, and we pretty much went through the PowerPoint that is posted up on the website, and the chapter, it's chapter 3. You should definitely, if you have not read chapter 3, you need to read that right away and highlight it. It may help some of you, depending upon your study skills and how you do things, to pull up this PowerPoint that I have posted. And of course, you can also go through the online content, that's what it's there for. That's in place of being here and having fun with us. You have that wonderful online content, and plus we also have the discussion groups to go back and look at some of those issues. And obviously this is posted in our Week 5 update, since this is the end of our Week 5 class. And you have the rest of the week to work on the assignments. And again, and others of you need to catch up, and I know I am about 1 week behind on grading, so I promise I'll get to that. Probably have to schedule it for Monday because I'm going away for the weekend, and tomorrow I'll be doing all my prep work. But pretrial services, we looked at and talked about, what is done pretrial. Federal government in many states actually have what they call pretrial services officers who may actually conduct an investigation to help a judge determine whether someone should be released into the community prior to going to trial. So is it safe for them to go out in the community? Is it likely that they will return for court? All those issues. Should they get bail? You have, in some communities, actually officers that do that. And that allows more people to get released out in the community than, say, in Philadelphia, where if you read some of the things about Philadelphia's criminal justice system, you have a lot of people that are incarcerated pre-trial, with the average, I think an article that I read today says upwards of 195 days or something that these people are locked up prior to trial, which is rather high compared to on a national level. And in some cases, I'm surprised there isn't a Sixth Amendment speedy trial rule suit, because there's a lot of people that spend a lot of time incarcerated in Philadelphia prior to trial. So you have pretrial services officers who may be responsible for doing that report, and in some cases, they actually supervise and look after the folks, go check on them periodically, just like if they were on probation or parole, but this is before they even get tried. And in those cases, they look after those folks up until the time either their cases turn out they're found guilty and then sentenced, or they're acquitted. And then, of course, we talked about the next thing was the pre-sentence investigation report and what that's all about. Basically, pre-sentence investigation report is a detailed look at the offender, their background, interviewing a whole bunch of different people, looking at records, court records, medical records, all kinds of things that are all listed in the PowerPoint and in your textbook. And those facts then help a judge to make a decision as to whether this person should be, what their sentence should be. You know, should it be an sentence of incarceration? Should it be probation? Whatever. The judge makes a determination. Of course, it all depends upon what the sentencing guidelines are in that particular state or the federal government, which is actually covered later on in the chapter. So probation officers have to gather a lot of detailed information. The chapter explains how that's done through interviews, collection of records, etc. Two basic forms, a long form or a short form. Long form be used for most of your felony cases, short form for misdemeanors and other minor crimes. But it's very important. And the pre-sentence investigation report is also very helpful to other than the judge. It has a lot of value for probation people to determine, you know, what type of program should we have available for this person. It helps in the prison system. It helps for classification. You know, what prison do we put this person in? Do we need to put them in a minimum security, maximum security, in between? And that pre-sentence investigation report is going to help the prison people decide which facility to send them to. And then once they're in the facility, where do we put them in the facility? You know, obviously, those of you that might be familiar with gangs and gang culture, you might not want to mix different gangs who might oppose each other, and you might have some violence in your facility, so you're not necessarily going to put a Latin King in with a bunch of Bloods or whatever. So that helps for the classification. It also helps for parole people later on. So to say your person's getting released from the prison system, the parole person needs to know how well do we have to supervise these people, who do we got to keep them away from. You know, there's a lot of different things that would need to be looked at in that report that's going to help a lot of different people. So it can help probation officers. It helps the judge to make a sentence, so it helps the probation officers afterwards. It helps the prison system to classify people properly and put them in the right place. And it certainly is going to help the parole people afterwards. And of course, the book goes into all that. The book also goes into what items should be in the PSI and what order they should be in, and different states do it different ways. I had an example in here in class of a form that the state of Nevada uses to collect information. Also, as part of our look at sentencing, we did a little activity here in class involving two cases. One was Raphael Jones, who in 2012 was released on parole, and I laid out for the folks here in the class, and I can post this up on the web if you want to look at it. It's a nice little exercise to give you an idea of what a judge might have to go through, or what a probation or parole officer might have to go to in deciding what to do with somebody. So I have this exercise, and the class here, the folks that were in class here, had to determine what should have been done with this guy based upon the facts that I gave them. And then we need to look up later on, you know, what actually happened to this guy. If he was released out in the community, did he reoffend? You know, what happened with him? And it's a rather serious case, so if you're not familiar with it, I would look up Raphael Jones. It's Rafael, and Jones, of course, is common spelling, Jones. And some of the information is back from 2012. It's a Philadelphia Inquirer article in August of 2012. And then another one is actually also from August of 2012, was a lady by the name of Anita Guzzardi. She was the chief financial officer for the Philadelphia Archdiocese, the Catholic Church, and she embezzled more than $900,000 from them over a 7-year period. So we laid out her case and asked the class to decide, you know, what should happen to her. And then, of course, we looked up to see what actually did happen, to see how well you got it. So that actually really helped the students to better understand the idea of sentencing and probation and parole release. Also had a good article, which I'm going to talk about later on when we get into parole a little bit more. But the guy Raphael Jones is actually mentioned in this article from January 4th, 2017, because of something that happened after his parole release, which we found out through our review of that case this evening. So we went through all that. You can find it all in Chapter 3 in your textbook or the online content, but you really do need to read and highlight the book, especially before you take the quizzes. If you want to do well on a quiz, some people had some difficulty with the quizzes. I believe most of them are set to unlimited, so if you're not happy with your grade, like some people got like a 4 out of 10, you can go back and try it again and see if you can do better. And if you think some of the questions, I haven't noticed any problems with the questions in this course, but if anything looks wrong to you, let me know. I will review it and make sure. So that's basically what we did tonight. Couple of discussions. We actually talked about the discussion questions that you have in discussion 5 and 6. And I'd also showed a little video that explained restorative justice. And I can post that one in the course, or you can look up YouTube, what is restorative justice. But it's also actually in Chapter 10 in your book. Page 250 is where restorative and community justice is explained. And your discussion question 5B asks you specifically about that. So you probably want to jump to Chapter 10 and read a few pages there to understand what restorative and community justice is before you try to tackle that question. Because obviously you're going to need to find out what it is. All right. Again, if you have any problems, any issues, any questions, don't hesitate to give me a call, send me an email, send me a message through the Dropbox. I actually had somebody call me last night and we had a nice discussion. And one of the things that was an interesting piece, and I try to get this out there, and our information literacy session that we had 2 weeks ago would have helped you with this. He actually told me, he said, Professor Plunkett, I am doing a research for the project and also doing it for the week's assignment. And I found these great resources on Google. But then when I click through to try to get them, they want me to pay to get access to the articles. Well, you know what the answer to that is? If you want those same good quality scholarly articles, go through our Pierce College library. We already pay a subscription to many of these databases where these articles are at, and you can download them for free. So go back to the information provided on information literacy from a couple weeks ago, and there's a link in there, and there's videos, or you can just check in here at the library if you're here on campus and find out how to make the best use of that information, because you're not going to get everything in a scholarly fashion by doing a Google search. You really do. If you want to be really successful in the class and in the field, you need to go way beyond that. So again, you can reach out to me anytime. I hope you're all doing well. I did send an email to one of you this evening who did not participate at all this week, and I just want to make sure that you're all right and you stay on top of it. And those of you that are behind, stay on top. But again, I think it's the week 3 materials I have to go through. There's like 6 assignments I still have to grade and get done with that. So I apologize for that. I had some really busy and traumatic stuff over the past couple weeks and wasn't able to get to it. So I promise on Monday I'm going to set aside multiple hours to get everything squared away and probably bring the whole course up to date. So anything that you have submitted up through Sunday night should be graded on Monday. Okay? If you have any questions, again, reach out to me. Thank you very much, and I hope everybody's okay. Bye-bye.